Good time zone. And a happy birthday to all of those around the world. Who's ready for another reading session of Terra the Journey? I know I am. There's always longer gaps between these than I intend, but you know, Hypergriff just won't give us a break. But today we'll be mostly probably getting through chapter 3, the rest of it. We did start a bit of it last time. And maybe getting into chapter 4. We shall see. I might have just... Nope. Did I kill the stream? No, okay, I think we're good. For a second, YouTube was like, hey, the stream's over. I'm like, no, it's not. I don't think so. Anyway, let's get into this. So yeah, last time we started chapter 3, which has been about the beasts of Terra. Actually, before we get into it, I do need to do one quick thing. Whabam. So yeah, so last time we had started chapter 3, which was on Beasts of Terra. We got through a couple of logs. It's being presented as journals written by the legendary Briogan. As he explores Terra, with comments from Erikson on Briogan's own stuff. Talked about flying oranginium slugs, that was cool. Talked about beast stewards. So now we're going to continue. So we are 190 or 129 Avinda Rio Fuerte, Real Iberia. Dear Claudius, at least I feel I am closer to the answers that I seek. I fear that it would take too many letters to convey all that I wish to express. However, to put it simply, after much effort with hand gestures, I finally managed to clear up our misunderstandings with the local tribespeople. The indigenous people of this patch of wilderness do not recognize themselves as Sargonian, and in their eyes the document that local Lord Emir had given us was no more than waste paper. It did not grant us the right to see their god without their permission. Once we had resolved the misunderstanding, these people, who had long isolated themselves from modern civilization, proved surprisingly agreeable to conversation. They permitted me to meet with their prophet of God, assuring me that he would be able to explain the extraordinary sight I had witnessed. But I digress. When we encountered the coral reef in the desert, we all felt rather uneasy and had to pause to check our portable water distillers. It was somewhat embarrassing to account, but at the time we generally feared death by dehydration, as we believed we must have been hallucinating. After all, it's hard to rationalize the appearance of a seabed in the desert as merely a mirage, but we had seen no hallucination. I guess coral just kind of exists on Terra. Never really thought about it. In stark contrast to the arid heat surrounding us, the stretch of land ahead had a much higher humidity and a more comfortable temperature. The landforms were composed almost entirely of biomass. Between the ashen layers of fossil, brightly colored but minute tentacles danced in the wind. The taxonomy of these organisms was rather unclear. These tentacles capture airborne organisms and decompose organic matter in their surroundings, exhibiting characteristics of animal, plant, and fungus. They stack atop one another in uneven heaps, resembling a coral reef, magnified 100-fold. We had encountered many oases in Sargon's deserts, where underground water is present, but this is no ordinary oasis. We gathered bottles of moist, white, sandy sediment and allowed it to bake in the desert sun for 8 hours. To our surprise, neither its moisture level nor temperature changed at all. When we performed the same experiment with the organisms living here, we obtained similar results. After exposure to the desert, their life signs quickly faded, yet there were no significant changes in their internal water content or temperature. Water that does not evaporate, heat that does not conduct. This is a phenomenon that I cannot comprehend. A material that seems to follow a completely different law of physics. Truth be told, I do not know if I should feel pleasantly surprised or fearful. Do you recall the Sea Patrol report on those particular seaborne? Complete adaptation to damage from energy weapons, even capable of absorbing energy from our transports. We have never truly understood how they are capable of such rapid evolution, but if there are materials in the world that could defy the laws of thermodynamics, that would be an explanation. Unaccustomed to this strange environment, we soon fell ill. Unable to sleep, we huddled in our tents, listening to the sound of our heavy breathing. Before setting off into the desert, we had purchased a tame beck beast from a Sargonian merchant to guide us. But upon arrival, it seemed to have completely lost its sense of direction. Each day it refused food and drink, instead mindlessly circling our camp. From air composition to magnetic field distribution, everything in the environment showed subtle differences with its surroundings. There were clear geological faults at the boundary between the reef and the desert, as though the land itself had been carved up and the reef was embedded in the desert. Two worlds brought together in the oddest of places. The reef organism was unable to adapt to the desert, and in turn foreign organisms were unable to live within it. It bore a striking resemblance to a seaborne layer, incongruent with its surroundings and inhospitable to external forms of life. However, while seaborne can ceaselessly expand from their layers, the organisms of this reef are confined to its boundaries. We dare not go any deeper without further planning, deciding to use our probe's last reserves of electricity to scout ahead. The deeper the probe penetrated into the reef, the worse the quality of the images it sent back. From those blurry images, we identified the form of an animal, one that is completely unprecedented. Its body plan was somewhat similar to oceanic creatures, yet it walked along its dragging limbs like a terrestrial animal. More than 1,000 of these creatures lumbered towards the depths of the coral reef, focused entirely on moving forward, giving no notice to the probe following behind them. The strange ecology here did not actively reject foreign entities, yet its increasingly bizarre environment impeded their progress regardless. The probe frequently encountered signal interference and sudden power drains, among other issues. Just before its function ceased, it transmitted its final image, a most peculiar and grotesque sight. Layer upon layer of biomass formed a tangled jungle, with cloudy streams of air belching from pores and fine arcs of electricity leaping between flora and fauna. The probe's environmental sensors continued to function for a short while, and the environmental temperature and the particulate density that it reported were astoundingly high, to the point that the air could very well be described as a solution. The probe was unable to return, and it quickly ceased to function entirely. We finally decided to leave this strange land. The night that we departed, our beck beast breathed its last. I feel as though we'd seen only the tip of the iceberg, and that the entire truth of this coral reef still lies hidden beneath the surface. An unusual environment, unusual creatures, even phenomena that defy the laws of physics. I struggle to assemble a rational hypothesis that can unify this smattering of desperate data. All I can say for certain is that this was not originally part of the desert, devoid as it is of desert organisms. As for whence it came, or why or how it moved, or how it stayed isolated from its surrounding environments for its lengthy existence, I cannot know. We had scarcely departed from the peculiar site when we were intercepted and detained by the local tribespeople who regarded us as intruders on their god. Even after several years of dry land, I still struggled to understand the cultural phenomenon known as religion. But at that time, I was surprised to find myself thinking that the tribe's primitive belief is not entirely baseless. They treat the coral reef as a whole, rather than seeing it as a specific area or environment. They treat it as a life form. You may have noticed that I have been using more an anatomical language to describe what I've seen. This was the most rational way I could devise to conceptualize it, as I fear that otherwise all these unimaginable phenomena would tear any unified theory at the seams. A life form that can single-handedly reshape its environment and produce a complete, self-sustaining ecosystem is not entirely unprecedented, as we are aware of one such individual, the firstborn of the ocean deep. Could it be possible that the bizarre sights I've seen are linked to the seaborn? Could I have witnessed a life form similar to the firstborn? My immediate assessment is that I may simply be seeing patterns and coincidence. I need more information. Whether or not the prophet is truly representative of its will, I sincerely hope that he will help my many questions. I will write to you as soon as possible. What the heck? Is it a Fahrenheit? That is the weirdest Fairmont there's ever been described. I think they mentioned Fairmonts earlier, though. He didn't mention it for this, though. Can't see anything. Am I on the right? Buy a better camera. You want to buy me a better camera? Me doing this is for fun? You want to buy me one? I didn't think so. It is extra blurry, though, for some reason. I feel like it is worse than last time. You know what? Let me try this. It's mainly a lighting problem more than a... But I don't know why it's like this. All the lighting is the same as last time, and I feel like last time it was better. What if I zoom right in? Not sure. Does that help? Also, why was YouTube chat so delayed? What the heck? Even when I fixed YouTube tab, it's still broken. Whatever. I think that helped. The lighting is very precarious, though. Just scan it. You want to buy me a scanner? Why is YouTube chat, though, so aggressive? Anyway, Briogan's letter ends here. As to the identity of this prophet of the tribe's people, or what information he imparted to Briogan, I do not know. Terra plays host to no small number of prophets, gods, priests, and others described as some sort of special entity. Before the dawn of civilization, humanity roamed the barrens, struggling against a hostile environment, frequent calamities, and vicious beasts. People or simple religions based on the natural environment were common, with Orangenium worship among the most common. Religious authority in primitive society was often wielded by those with an understanding of Orangenium. So they worshipped Orangenium. Okay. Or a proficiency in arts. Much of the upper echelons of civilized nations likewise pursue both Orangenium products and arts with great fervor. Even to this day, the embers of Orangenium worship still burn, with zealots devoting themselves to the Orangenium and even catastrophe. Orangenium aside, plants, animals, natural phenomena, and geographic landforms have all been objects of worship. Yerig's faith and their mountain goddess can be considered a combination of the latter two forms of worship. Topical. Many of these simple faiths have faded away into forgotten memory, but it is difficult for me to assert with any certainty that the prophet mentioned in Briogan's letter was product of superstition. After all, modern science struggles to explain the assorted phenomena that he describes. Reproducing these phenomena is not particularly difficult. Many skilled casters can induce objects to maintain a specific temperature for a short while. However, the very act of casting Orangenium arts involves a conversion and flow of energy, and if one were to temporarily stop heat conductivity on a spot, one would require energy flow over an even greater area. Relying solely on arts, I am afraid that it would be impossible to actually reduce heat conductivity to zero. Moreover, I find it far more plausible that the contents of Briogan's bottle possessed unique properties rather than the idea that someone would cast arts on the bottle continuously for 8 hours in a desert. A collection of animal specimens and at the Royal Academy of Sciences suggests that the existence of such a peculiar material is rather possible. The form of these specimens are varied, but they are, without exception, remarkably different from all other animals known to science. These specimens contain no Orangenium, but they exhibit phenomena that are difficult to explain with modern science. Consider the documentation of one of the taxidermists, Carcass OFAS 021, discovered in the periphery of Kazdal. No reaction to immersion in corrosive fluid or for 1 month. During routine observations on the morning of the 32nd day, I noted only a few bone fragments left in the vessel, as though the entire carcass had corroded overnight, as though time did not have a uniform effect on it. Briogan believed that what he had observed ignored the known laws of nature, constituting a great power, one that could reform the environment and nature and nurture life within. If such a power truly existed, I fear that only one term, Sargonian in origins and rife with controversy, is fitting. Fahrenheit. Numerous scholars dedicate themselves to the study of Fahrenheits, but given the extreme lack of data, their theories remain highly speculative at best. Some might joke that Fahrenheitologists are just another gaggle of prophets. In recent years, researchers have suggested that Fahrenheits are the true objects of veneration for several religions, but none have managed to put forth a compelling thesis on the topic. We are incapable of proving whether Yeragander or Sami Villain are Fahrenheits, for after all, we lack even a basic understanding of what a Fahrenheit is. This is probably sounds like one of the craziest one. Although all the ocean Fahrenheits are insane. Whatever they did to them down in the mantle ruins, they really created some weird stuff. Yeragander certainly wasn't like this. I guess Carcass OFAS 021 could be related to Lifebone, it seems. Perhaps. If only because they mentioned time and Kazdal, but, you know. Could be something else. Now we have a good old note from Calcit. The Stoy Regulator has done an excellent job of making sure everything stays confidential. The Fahrenheit issue affects all Yen. Considering Terra's circumstances, the Empire is not in a position to disclose information about the creatures to foreign parties. The scholars of Yen have a relatively thorough understanding of the Fahrenheits. The Stoy Regulator's archives are vast, containing detailed records of multiple Fahrenheits, as well as various strategies for handling them. However, none of the Regulator's hundreds of volumes touch upon the fundamental nature of the beasts. The people of Terra still have only a superficial understanding of them. The scarcity of understanding reflects the decline of the Fahrenheits. The great beings have once shaped the fate of the entire planet with their supernatural power, yet today their existence is completely unknown to most. That's changing, question mark? I mean, it's changing at least in the scientific community. The dissemination of scientific knowledge to the public, though, is not always an easy thing. Especially when the scientists themselves make it difficult. So, in the scientific community, it's seemingly changing. But whether or not it's changing for everyone... At least by Infield, it seems to have really changed. I don't know if it's totally public on Infield, but a lot of people talk about it. A lot of people, but they're all smart people, so I'm not sure if it's completely public. Yay, it's bird and beasts. Going straight from crazy Fahrenheit to a bird and beast. We also have whatever this thing over here is. Oh, we'll also maybe learn about a gallop beast finally. Won't that be nice? Oh, we've got a scale. Yeah, not as big as I would have thought. It's a little smaller, at least this type. Bird and beast. Before the rise of nomadic cities, bird and beasts were the symbol of civilization. They might have been the very first animals domesticated. Nowadays, they are mostly used as working animals or as mounts. But millennia ago, when primitive humanity first raised up the bird and beast, it was not for the sake of transport. The earliest tribes had neither the practice of stockpiling food nor the technology to preserve it. They also rarely had enough possessions to require the aid of animals to move. The greatest need in pursuit of survival was a method of avoiding catastrophe. Most of Terra's creatures shared this need, and many have evolved the ability to avoid oranginium. They detect subtle environmental changes that indicate the shifts in oranginium concentration, thus predicting catastrophes. Observing the movements of wild animals was an important forecasting method, and unusually large-scale migrations typically indicate environmental changes and the coming of catastrophe. Even in the modern day, catastrophe messengers in less developed regions who lack specialized equipment remain familiar with the behavior patterns of local wildlife. Scale seems different because the doctor looked tiny in comparison. I don't think they put much care into making sure the scale is perfect for every image. I also don't know if we have a doctor's height, so who knows? The doctor could be short. When the wildlife would embark on a large-scale migration, the local tribes of early man would follow them closely most of the time. However, humans found themselves at a disadvantage. Compared to their fellow migrants, to compensate, they devised a way to hitch a free ride, which was to ride the animals. Of course. Upon mastering this skill that helped them evade catastrophes, they named their mounts Burden Beast. Burden Beasts are covered in either dense fur or thick skin, enough to deter the majority of small to medium predators, but this heavy armor renders them unable to shake off anyone or anything that manages to climb on them. The very first Burden Beast riders had no need to control where their mounts took them. After all, the beasts had a much cleaner sense of direction than humans when it came to avoiding catastrophe. It is only when humans began to establish settlements, accumulate property, and require burden beasts to transport their belongings that they took direct control of these pack animals and initiated selective breeding programs. A settled lifestyle and the accumulation of property led to gradual development of riding. The term burden beast was at first only used for the domesticated variety, but was eventually applied equally to wild populations. In truth, the vast majority of burden beasts that we know and love today are domesticated, with rather docile temperaments. One thing worth mentioning is how similar tamed burden beast eyes are to our own. Many believe that a burden beast is capable of expressing a rich tapestry of emotion and mood with its eyes. In recent years, campaigns for the ethical treatment and scientific study of bird and beasts have frequently invoked a bird and beast's eyes, which has become a symbol for animal rights organizations across the land. Yeah, so we have a furry one here. And like a non-furry just hide one there. That's more like Kajimesh. Are these Birdo Muck? Does every picture here just have Birdo Muck in it for some reason? What's going on? I just realized. But all of these are still the like rhino ones. There are non-rhino ones. Bird and beast are omnivores, really, but mainly subsist on plants. That changes my perspective of them completely. They'll eat meat? That's crazy. A flat, forked horn is positioned on the beast's nose, which it mainly uses to dig for roots and tubers. The interior of a bird and beast's mouth is incredibly thick, rendering the self-defense mechanism of plants ineffective. As a result, many thorny cacti are part of the bird and beast's diet. Bird and beast manure can take many forms depending on their diet. In the wild, it is used by different herds to mark their territories, while in human society, bird and beast manure makes a fine fertilizer. Bird and beasts have an extremely wide distribution and are found in nearly every corner of the land, except for the harshest environments, such as the Infi Icefield or the Foen Hotlands. Well, I don't blame them. Who would want to go to either of those places? Bird and beasts are different in different environments, express diverse morphologies. Those in northern cold climates often grow long, thick fur to keep warm, while bird and beasts in tropical rainforests have a sleek, bare skin, which they use to evaporate sweat and dissipate heat. Those living in deserts are covered in a layer of insulating scales, while those that make the savanna their home feature folded, coarse skin to which mud and moisture cling. These desperate forms often also mean that people in different regions have markedly different experiences with them. Rainforest dwellers must endure the bird and beast's pungent body odors, while the herdsmen of the prairies had to invent hydrophobic pants that make cleaning off the mud easier. Incredible. Bird and beast is a folk taxonomic term, as it were, used to refer to any domesticated creature that humanity applies to work. The species introduced in this article is the most widespread and the one first domesticated. It is also the most ancient recipient of the name bird and beast. This species is widely known for its tenacity, ability to endure a harsh environment, and propensity for long-distance travel, but certainly not for its speed. Its squat, stocky form is better suited to carrying heavy loads than running men across time and space. There's a period there. Than running. Men across time and space have domesticated many other species of bird and beast as well, such as the steed bird and beast for its four slender yet powerful limbs, often used for racing or sports, or the predator bird and beast with vicious claws on its four limbs, often serving as a mount for cavalrymen. The range of species and carry the moniker bird and beast still sees debate to this day, whether the long-leg fowl beasts tamed by the Rimbilitonians can be considered bird and beasts is a topic that never fails to draw argument. I think that's like the big ostrich thing we've seen one time, and maybe. So they're calling this a quote-unquote steed bird and beast, but I think that's just a gallop beast. I don't know what this is. It's cool though. Oh my gosh, an actual picture of a Sistabeast. It only took 6 years, but they actually have an image of a sister beast. This is what we get milk from, everybody. About the same size. So that's 190 to 200 centimeters, average snouts to tail length. Oh, that's just the length. That's not the height. And this one was 210 to 240 centimeters in length, not height. So burning beasts are slightly longer, actually. Sister beasts are another type of creature that plays a major part in man's daily life by providing milk and meat. Their defining characteristics are the two tumor-like organs they sport on their bodies, one large, one small. The one on the chest is generally known as the cyst udder, while the one on the top of its back is called the cysta hump. Yeah, see, I was wondering, it looked like it had like a shell, but I guess that's a tumor. Tumor-like organ. And I see the front one now. Weird. What a freakish animal, actually. These organs are mainly composed of fatty tissues and glands. Their main functions is to store nutrients and produce milk. Wild sister beasts are able to survive several months without food, relying solely on the nutrients stored in the cysta udder and cysta hump. During the lactation phase, the nutrients stockpiled in these organs are converted into milk to feed their young. The ability to secrete milk is not determined by the sister beast's sex, but rather by its age. Both male and female beasts need to store nutrients, resulting in both sexes sporting cysta udders and cysta humps, and naturally allowing both to suckle their young. However, as a sister beast ages, its digestive capabilities decline, resulting in an increased reliance on the nutrients stored in its reservoirs, and the corresponding decrease in milk quantity and quality year after year. The milk produced by a sister beast is known as sister milk or sister lac, and it is one of the food industry's most important raw ingredients. There is even a Lateran proverb: without sister milk, there is no cuisine. As a faithful enjoyer of sister milk bread, I am in complete agreement. Milk produced by elder sister beasts has a distinctly sour taste, which has made it an unexpected hit in the dairy market these past few years. This so-called sour sister milk is quite expensive, but has little nutritional value and is mostly used to satisfy those hunting for novel sensations. The sister beast's uniquely shaped tail is formed of thick, stiff, gelatinous tissue. Not only does it swat away mosquitoes, it also deals smaller predators a heavy blow. Smaller predators, such as wild tusk beasts, have learned to not hunt sister beasts unless absolutely necessary. Their sharp fangs can indeed pierce a sister beast's thick skin, but the sister beast has ample defenses, whether attacked from the front or the rear. Its pointed horn and club tail both inflict heavy damage on any enterprising tusk beast. This is why, when left no alternative but to hunt sister beasts, tusk beasts packs instead clamber up their sides, opting to attack the sister beast's relatively tender back and belly. Interestingly, in the pastures of some regions, we may enjoy the marvelous sight of a lone tusk beast directing an entire herd of sister beasts. Domesticated sister beasts are bred to reduce aggression, and herdsmen often use trained tusk beasts to help them guide their livestock. I'm surprised it's not a Beck beast that does that, to be honest. I thought Beck beasts were more of the dog, but I guess tusk beasts also do that. Sister beasts boast a bright golden or silver mane on their napes, which is often crafted into accessories and ornaments due to its vibrant color. Sister beast mane brushes are also cherished by artists across every nation. So do the humps have teats on them as well to get milk, or is it just the udder on the front? Because they both make milk, apparently. What is the back one for? How does that work? Weird. Freakish, but I'm glad to know now. And of course, everyone's favorite little creature, the sand beast. If you were to stop in the middle of a desert and observe your surroundings, you might notice a few odd dunes slowly bobbing up and down under the light of the sun. These dunes are in fact a fascinating creature of the desert, sand beasts. Their most prominent feature is the hump on their backs, a structure known as the back fin. The back fin is, for the most part, an important part of how the sand beast dissipates heat. Sand beasts are mostly distributed in desolate regions such as rock or sand deserts. To escape the fierce sunlight and scorching temperatures, they bury themselves in the ground, exposing only their back fins. It is at this point that the organ slowly shows another major function: respiration. A sand beast's back fin is covered in a dense network of folds and ridges. The back fin's skin is thin and almost transparent, packed with many capillaries to facilitate efficient gas exchange. This is what permits a sand beast to bury itself within the sand for 7 to 8 hours without suffocating. This burrowing behavior has another important purpose: evading predators. Sand beasts live in many different regions, have distinct back fin morphologies. In rocky deserts, they have back fins with craggy corners and protrusions, resembling a mundane pile of gravel. In many sand deserts, their curved back fins feature folds that mimic ripple marks, allowing them to blend in with the dunes. In areas with more vegetation, not only do their back fins resemble mounds of dirt, but some even harbor blades of grass to further enhance their camouflage. I was wondering what's going on over here. So that one's got like grass on it. So I got the 3 types: rock, sand, grass. Haven't seen a grass one. The sand beast's broad hooves are perfect tools for digging. Their burrow extends in all directions like a subterranean maze. Very few predators are able to find a sand beast young hidden away in their deepest caverns. Only in regions relatively short of food would one choose to put in the great time and effort needed to hunt a sand beast. Simply finding all the entrances and exits to its burrows would take the better part of 2 days. Specifically 2 days. Okay. Nevertheless, sand beast meat is said to be exquisite. There is a famous spicy sand beast dish enjoyed across the northern regions of Yen. In recent years, more and more individuals have toyed with the idea of breeding sand beasts. But most of these business ventures end in financial ruin. All for one very simple reason. If kept in a sandy enclosure, the sand beast will simply escape by burrowing away. If confined to a brick enclosure where they cannot dig, their meat becomes of poor quality. Sand beasts are omnivorous as well, which I expected that from them. Not from bird beasts, though. Though naturally timid, they make excellent predators. As burrowing animals, they naturally excel at swiftly navigating any tunnel system and breaching burrows. Many smaller herbivores, such as musk beasts, are also burrowing creatures and make up a part of the average sand beast's diet. Sand beasts have sharp fangs growing out of their mandibles, giving their prey no leeway to escape once bitten. Some barrenland hunters train sand beasts as partners, but as they are wild creatures, the success rate is not particularly high. If a sand beast refuses to eat in captivity for 7 days, the hunter is left with no choice but to release it back into the wild. The hunter would say that successfully training a sand beast relies not only on willpower, but also on luck. No talk about them being used for mining, like we saw in Grinning Valley, which had tamed domesticated sand beasts. Ray certainly is good at it, apparently. Also, they are, what are they? They are 60 to 70 centimeters in length. Mangler beasts. Okay, man, okay, Terran animals are apparently like Pokemon. They're all way smaller than you think they should be. That's a Mangler beast? That's a Gloom Pincher? That thing's so much smaller. It's Pokemon all over again. That Mangler beast is way bigger in episode 16. The Gloom Pinchers are way bigger. Hard to say in Arknights, but on infield, they certainly are way bigger. Mangler beasts. For many, the Mangler beast is an embodiment of fear itself. The Mangler beast is a fierce carnivore, widely distributed across Terra. Its most prominent features are its array of razor-sharp claws, fangs, and specialized hairs called Mangler's fur. The Mangler's beast claws and fangs are long and sharp with small barbs on the inner edges. They can inflict horrible or horrific wounds on their prey, causing unstoppable bleeding. The hair on their neck and bellies conceals a more specialized, rigid set of hairs, the aforementioned Mangler's fur. The edges of the Mangler's fur are extremely sharp and can easily slice through hides of most animals' mouths. Even if one was to lie prone on the ground and expose its soft neck and belly, the Mangler's fur would be a deterrent to any foe. Should anything trespass on their territory, Mangler beast packs do not... they have packs? Oh god. Packs do not hesitate to attack the interloper, even if it happens to be a great beast weighing several tons. There are even reports of pack engaging in battle against a wild wing beast, or giant wing beast. Smaller creatures generally have a better time surviving. For the most part, but animals are also prone to growing large. Until an extinction event wipes them all out. Every time. I would just think the Mangler beast as a bear would be a bit bigger. I guess it's a smaller bear, but like... bears can get pretty big. These guys, kind of small. Trained Mangler beasts are an important component of the Erikson army, as we're all familiar with. These creatures have a strong desire for flesh and exhibit insensitivity to pain in battle, efficiently eliminating their enemies in a frenzied state. Before the clashing of armies, Erikson officers would command Mangler beasts to tear captives apart in front of their enemies, effectively breaking their morale before the battle even began. One subspecies worth mentioning is one that resides in the extreme north, the giant Mangler. Well, that answers that question. That's the one we saw then. Yeah, okay. They share a similar body structure with common Mangler beasts, but are several times larger. Once a symbol of Erikson military might, giant Manglers mounted with turrets were the core of the Erikson front lines. Sick. Awesome. Before adopting a comprehensive reform in its tactic systems, the Erikson army deployed them against the war beasts of the Somnifioid, the Rockhorns. I didn't know the Somnifioid used Rockhorns, okay. Nowadays, the role of giant Manglers has been fully replaced by armored troops. Mangler beasts have transitioned from a heavy combat unit to special ops, with the Ursian army opting for breeds that are smaller, more agile, and easier to tame. The Mangler beast is a classic pack animal. A complete pack consists of a few dozen Mangler beasts and a female leader. The leader of a pack is called a pack mother. Brute strength is the only criterion for becoming a pack mother, and confrontations for dominance are common, even more so during food shortages. Mangler beasts display sequential hermaphroditism. Really? That is to say, they are able to change their gender. All Mangler beasts are born female, and it is only once one survives life's many struggles that it becomes male at the age of 10 or so, upon which it wins valuable mating opportunities. This unusual reproductive strategy ensures that the pack is a stable population size, and also ensures that the genes of strongest fighters are passed on to the next generation. Wild Mangler beasts do not live long, so male Mangler beasts are rare, often dying quickly after mating. It is due to its rarity that many assume Mangler beasts are single-sex species. Fascinating. Fascinating. Not common for land animals. Yeah, you don't, mammals, I don't think typically, I don't think of any mammal that has that. You got hyenas that are like the closest thing, but not even at all. What? Fun detail for alien animal species. I was trying to look up the rockhorn because I thought we've seen those, but maybe not. There's that one creature. I thought it was called rock something. I think it was also in Flurry to the Flame, or... Yeah, I think of a Basoro beast, I think, which is not a rockhorn. And now, everyone's other favorite animal, the Gloom Pincher. I don't know if that's true, actually. Gloom Pinchers are crustaceans that live in rivers, lakes, swamps, and other freshwater environments, including the sewer. Its mostly defining characteristics is its enormous claws. Even as small Gloom Pinchers have claws the length of a human forearm. The Gloom Pincher is named for its incredible strength of its claws, and an adult can easily shatter the bones of a burden beast or any other medium to large animal. However, their strength comes at a cost. Gloom Pincher claws have a very limited reach, only able to grasp objects in a small area directly beneath its body. Unlike a metal crab, it cannot raise its claws high. Interesting. When hunting large prey, the Gloom Pincher leaps with its powerful hind limbs and secures itself onto the prey's body with its sharp dactyly, which I assume is its feet, because dactyl is toe, isn't it? Dactyly doesn't come up. I wasn't sure that was like actually what you call like a crab or like legs or something, and nothing comes up for it. It might be though, in some way. Where was I? Allowing it to put its great claws to use. In truth, the Gloompincher's pointed dactyly can pierce more than animal hide, but also brittle rock. Cave-dwelling Gloompinchers suspend themselves from cave walls, waiting to pounce on any passing animal. However, despite its fearsome appearance, the Gloompincher is no lover of battle like the Mangler beast, and for the most part it prefers to hunt small scalyxes? What? Scaleckies? I assume that's another animal that I just have never, ever mentioned before. The Gloompincher's claw and legs are natural harpoons capable of easily impaling swimming scalekees. Scalesees. Is that a fish? Is that a type of fish? In Kajimersh, farmed Gloompinchers are often deployed in the arena. Under the command of the organizer's casters, they attack knights slated for elimination in a wild frenzy while acting dull and litless before knights due for promotion. They are sacrificial victims on the altar of this farce of a sport. Damn, okay, Erikson. Thanks to the competitive use of Gloompinchers, it has been a general consensus among most large Kajimeran hospitals to keep well-staffed orthopedic departments. The Gloompincher's abdomen is the softest part of its body and also one of its most nutritious. Gloompincher claw meat is famed for its chewy texture, while Gloompincher abdomen is the key ingredient in many well-known dishes thanks to its fresh aroma. Since the development of Gloompincher farming, canned Gloompincher abdomen is now stocked in all major supermarkets. The Gloompincher has developed a hard carapace to protect its soft abdomen. When accosted... I just lost my spot. Yeah, when accosted by a predator, the Gloompincher will bury half of its body in silt, exposing only its claws and the carapace on its back. Swamp Gloompinchers have thinner, softer carapaces than lake and river-dwelling cousins, but by regularly coating their bodies in a mud slurry to form crusts of soil, they may mount a reliable defense. If this slurry happens to contain seeds, small plants will happily take root on the Gloompincher's back, affording it an additional means of camouflage. So we have like a thinner one there, that might be a swamp one then, thicker one over there. We got some ones with little flowers on it. (50 to 60 centimeters in length. Cloud Beast, Beck Beast, and Musk Beast. The cat, the dog, and the rodent. The cloud beast is a common animal, small in stature and often seen living in cities. As an urban animal that lives alongside humanity, a cloud beast's diet is varied. Whether animal, plant, or food waste, nothing is off limits to a cloud beast's palate. Certain cloud beast breeds, however, specifically bred as pets, have somewhat flawed digestive systems. careless feeding can result in symptoms such as diarrhea, which makes it difficult for abandoned pet cloud beasts to survive. Cloud beasts' long, soft ears bestow upon it remarkable hearing. Passing alleyways, people often hear the clattering of hooves off into the distance, a sign that the cloud beast has long detected their footsteps and decided to make its escape. Unlike many animals that use their tails to communicate, cloud beasts have a short tail that is unable to wag to any appreciable degree. Instead, they mostly convey their mood via fanning their long ears. Many affectionate owners of cloud beasts say that stroking a cloud beast's ear is one of its greatest joys on Terra. Cloud beasts come in many colors, and the Yinnies are fond of assigning elegant titles for each variety of its coat. They have even written a tome collating them, titled Shang Yun Jing, or the Classic of Cloud Beasts. Though not a poet, I shall endeavor to translate some of these lovely cloud beast titles as closely as their Yinnies meaning as possible. Wu Yun Beast, or Thunder Cloud Beast, is pure black. Shi Yun Beast, or Snow Cloud Beast, is entirely white. Wu Yun Gai Zhi, or Thunder Cloud over Snow, refers to a black back with a white belly. Mo Yu Chu Zhu, or Ink Jade on Thread, describes a black body with a white tail. At traditional Yinnies theaters, rapidly reciting all of these elaborate and mouthful titles in one go is a classic performance and a basic skill for the performers. Cloud beasts are social animals, and each clan forms packs that roam together. In cities, every clan has its own fixed territory, and only the most powerful one may occupy areas such as the business district where food is plentiful. It is quite common to see different clans duking it out on the streets, clashing their horns together to determine the victor. In recent years, some cities have seen the appearance of cloud beast clan fans. When two clans clash over territory, their supporters engage in brawls of their own. Wow. And the Beck Beast. Cloud Beast is 40 to 50 centimeters. Beck Beast is 35 to 45. Larger range. Well, actually, no, smaller range. 40 to 50 to 35 to 45. Okay. The Beck Beast is a small domesticated animal, long famed for their important role in military and police of all nations. They are also trusted partners to messengers, firefighters, and private detectives. Their sensitive nose and whiskers are the main reasons they can be so helpful. With a strong sense of smell, they perform remarkably well during search and rescue, bomb disposal, and pursuit missions, among many others. The Beck Beast's ancestors were cave-dwelling creatures, and so their domesticated descendants inherited their small eyes and poor sense of sight. As such, the Beck Beast is reliant upon its whiskers during operation, allowing them to perceive their surroundings, avoiding obstruction and danger. Domesticated Beck Beasts have retained another cave-dwelling trait, long claws suited to excavating dirt. Beck Beasts living among humans have no further need to dig, but their claws still grow continuously, making scratching mats a critical item to a Beck Beast owner. Ancient worshippers of Oranginium would ingest powdered Oranginium ore to perform a seance. Hallucinogenic drugs containing Oranginium have persisted into the modern period. When not undertaking more urgent missions, the main duty of police Beck Beast is to help guard the city gates by detecting criminals attempting to smuggle such hallucinogens. Beck Beasts are small in stature, and even standing on their hind limbs would not allow them to reach a tourist's backpack. To facilitate their vital sniffing task, some cities have installed Beck Beast platforms at their gates, putting them at the backpack height. Cute. A Beck Beast's nose and whiskers are its strength, but also its weakness. For the safety of Beck Beasts, most police officers rotate them in shifts. After 3 months on duty, a Beck Beast is allowed 3 months of rest and relaxation, ensuring they return to their posts in peak condition. I do appreciate that they could have made one animal that was just the dog, but they actually have two animals. They got three animals technically. So you've got the Beck Beast for like the sniffing part. Tusk Beasts apparently can do herding and hunting. And then you have Hounds, which are, I guess, just military, really, but... Oranginium-based funny drugs. Yeah, I guess, I mean... Sounds like the worst possible drug to take. Unless it's not active oranginium, maybe it's safe, I don't know. Sounds like a bad idea, though. And the musk beast, 10 to 20 centimeters in length. Musk beasts are small, burrowing creatures endemic to Sargon. With the development of international trade, musk beasts began stowing away with merchant caravans, which subsequently distributed them to every nation across Terra. Usually concealed in the inner layers of trucks, they are difficult to find without thorough inspection. Investigation works too. The musk beast has quickly adapted to urban life, becoming an invasive species and a persistent thorn in many a side. Musk beasts feed on a wide variety of nuts and tubers. Those living in cities especially love potatoes. You and me both. They often sneak into fast food restaurants in groups, snatching every fried potato to be found in the kitchen. One restaurant attempted to deter any further thefts by seasoning their chips with Changshu peppercorns and mustard, but to no avail. The mischief of musk beast molars is not limited to food theft. Whether small as a charging cable or large as a transport pipe, there is no tube that a musk beast will leave ungnawed. Unfortunately, coating the pipe in bitter paint does not deter the bite of a musk beast. These guys are menaces. In Sargon, the sand beast is a natural predator of the musk beast. As a burrower, a sand beast effortlessly tears apart a musk beast's tunnels and accurately locates its hiding spot. However, due to the difficulty in taming sand beasts and their inability to adapt to urban life, plans to introduce sand beasts to control musk beast populations quickly fell apart. It is worth mentioning that the adornments on the musk beast's crown and forelimbs are structurally similar to feathers. The feather-like structure atop its head functions similar to whiskers, enabling the musk beast to detect minute vibrations in the air. The structure on its forelimbs spread apart, giving the musk beast a somewhat aerodynamic form that allows it to glide short distances while leaping about. There are flying squirrels, too. The musk beast digs outside slide-like structures at the entrance of its burrows. When rushing out, it uses these slides to glide a considerable distance, allowing it to escape from pursuing predators. That's fun. This is like the traditional musk beast, but I believe the ones you see in Da Huang are also musk beasts, if I remember correctly. And those ones look more like rats, where these ones are more like squirrel things. Could be wrong, though. Let me check. Because I forget what those guys are called. They're called field musk. So musk beast, field musk. They both have musk. I assume they're related then, yeah. And that's the end of Beasts of Terra, which is, you know, not a lot in terms of listing out actual animals. We got some good lore though, but I mean, we could have had more. I probably take up a whole book just for all the animals, but there's so many that I'd want to know about. At least we got Sister Beast. I think that's like the biggest one that we mentioned so much but have never seen. Not a single foul beast though. That's kind of strange. They mention metal crabs, but don't talk about them. Oh well. They also mention mosquitoes, which implies that there are just like normal insects on Terra. Anything about wasps? No. I don't think we've ever seen any wasp creature. Biggest arthropods are the gloom pinchers, really. Cicero record mentioned something nasty akin to a wasp's. Really? I haven't read that. That's interesting. Yeah, I don't know of any other insect creatures, really. Unless there's anything in SSS, which I don't play, so I know there are a bunch of random enemies in there sometimes. Reclamation algorithm. Does reclamation algorithm have anything? No. Some new slugs. We love slugs. A shell beast, which is like a weird turtle thing. One of the rabbit burden beasts. Yeah. As mutants. They do like their mutants. It's also hard to know like what's actually canon. think most things, though, you do have to take as canon, which means that we have, like, snowmen creatures in Yerik. Yeah, I thought they were spirits too. I was like, I guess maybe they're from Yeragander, but then the game's like, no, they're just animals. It's like, okay, if you say so. Chapter 4, though, Races of Terra. That's a big one. Will we cover every race? There's presumably less races than animals, so it's more possible. In the 60s, while lecturing a Victorian National University, I delivered a series of lectures under the broad theme of Terrans and complex societies. At the time, some students approached me asking if I might preserve part of the content in written form for future study and reference. Transcriptions of those lectures form the basis for this chapter of the book. Were we to travel back 2 centuries in time and present this chapter to racial studies scholars of that era, we might be met with disbelief and confusion. At the time, research on humanity was extremely narrow in focus, and scholars were mainly interested in measuring the heights and weights of different races. They focus on topics like the maximum strength of a male forta, topics like the material conditions of various races and their status in society and culture have only emerged as fields of study over the past century or so. I am not suggesting that today's researchers are superior to their predecessors. Rather, I am paying homage to the pioneers of the field. How did people's perceptions change? What broadened our horizons? When did we come to realize that Terrans are both a biological organism and a social identity? With the invention of sociology. Anyone who wishes to truly understand these subjects should respect the existing body of knowledge and the pioneers who built it. As such, we must first fully examine the intellectual history of racial studies. With a comprehensive background, we can then proceed to discuss the current state of society. Therefore, in this chapter, readers will first encounter a historical introduction, followed by exploration of race. I've streamlined the more tedious academic discussions and attempted to present my research as objectively as possible. In addition to the content of the original lectures, I've also added some of my thoughts and reflections from recent years. As I write this section now, I can't help but feel grateful that I heeded the advice of my young students. Manuscripts from 30 years ago combined with my recent journeys and reflections have come together to form the content of this chapter on humanity. Ancient Terran society and its people. Here we go. Got some cave art, rock art, the rhombus, clearly oranginium. To speak plainly, much of modern knowledge of ancient times is rooted in imagination. The ravages of catastrophe and the slow expansion of oranginium veins not only hindered our actions in physical space, but also limited the boundaries of our intellectual exploration. For most of recorded Terran history, our understanding of the past has relied on interpreting oral tradition and excavating ancient ruins. While modern vehicles give us quick access to remote areas and archaeological digs, underlined, fieldwork remains risky due to the threat of catastrophe. I assume this is attached to that underline, so... the ever-expanding Oranginium veins have swallowed remnants of even more ancient times. In a sense, archaeologists have never truly uncovered the earliest traces of our ancestors, though perhaps that is nothing to regret. Therefore, our current approach is to unearth new information while also summarizing and analyzing existing data. With this research model, our pursuit of the truth is a slow, gradual process. Today's discoveries may be revised tomorrow. However, it is this ongoing revision that brings us closer to the truth of the past. So what were ancient peoples really like? The earliest known humans were physically very similar to their modern counterparts. This is evidenced by two key items. 1. Ancient human skeletons unearthed in Sargon, and 2. Ancient mural paintings that have been discovered in various locations. Analyses indicate that the skeletal structure of the ancient man was almost identical to its modern descendants, height being the only difference. And ancient paintings, even the most primitive and rudimentary works, depict human features that are indistinguishable from modern mankind. Are we gonna get like a date of like how the oldest humans? Because that's gonna put things into perspective. And I wonder if we could find, if we're lucky, could we find a human that is not yet fully human? What do I mean? I mean, like, they're still an animal. Partly. Like, how fast did the transformation take? Was there an extended period of time when they were still like in between, or did it happen overnight? Here we have ancient murals recently discovered on the southern border of Sami. The human figures depicted on them are almost identical to modern humans. Some believe these murals suggest that Oranginian worship already existed in ancient Terra. Probably gradual, right? Well, that's the thing, is like, where it's like, okay, the most ancient humans we have are identical, so like, it might have just happened really quickly. Research shows that humans, as far back as we can trace, had already lived in organized societies. Archaeological findings show a surprising uniformity among the earliest societies, within each distinct geographic region. Namely, people with similar physiological characteristics tended to live together, increasing their own chances of survival by helping one another. Additionally, we observed consistent patterns in the distribution of house foundations in some ancient ruins. Larger houses typically contain only simple necessities, while smaller ones often include exquisite artifacts and excessive supplies that seem disproportionate to their size. Huh. The mainstream academic view is that this phenomenon reflects the social relationships of that time. Two groups with vastly different social statuses constituted the mass society. One group had only basic resources sufficient for daily survival and lived in large communal rooms. Okay, yeah, that makes sense. Like a longhouse. While the other enjoyed what could be considered lives of luxury and resided in private homes. However, many remain skeptical of this view due to the lack of direct written records or other reliable evidence. This common social dynamic can be succinctly described as a provider-protector relationship. This refers to the two roles of Terran people of the time, which largely persisted in extremely harsh natural environments. The providers were responsible for tasks such as gathering food and establishing settlements, work that was relatively safe. The protectors were typically the stronger individuals, tasked with maintaining security in the settlements. Because they took on more risk in daily life, they received a larger share of resources. Apparently, the protectors, known as the elders, were able to accumulate more resources than the providers or the ancients. This laid the groundwork for later periods when the elders would rule over the ancients. In my view, this theory is quite reasonable. The social relationship formed the basis of the minority-majority dynamic, the simplest way to organize a society with significant power disparity. As society developed and populations migrated, this ancient social relationship gradually evolved into the ruler-ruled model. So the elder races were the protectors, and the ancient races were providers. And I'm not getting that mixed up in the sense that the elders are the mythical ones, right? And the ancients are the normal. I always have to check myself on that. It's yes, the elders are the mythical ones. Ancients are the normal animals. Could have come up with more distinct names. Yeah, they could have. I agree. Solitary dwellers outside society, up here. In fact, not all Terrans instinctively form social groups for survival. In the Sami region, a group of Sarkaz, known as the Cyclops, have a unique culture of solitude. Cyclopses are strong and reclusive. They live in isolated locations, a behavior that likely originated after their migration from Kazdal to Sami. In their culture, learning to live with oneself is a crucial concept, possibly stemming from their long lifespan, which encourages such widespread introspection across the entire group. There you go. The Tribal Era and the Oslan Conquest. Then came the era when writing began to emerge. At this time, the concept of a nation had not yet developed in the Sargonian Empire or the lands of Yen, two countries frequently mentioned in historical discussion. The concept of ruler and rule had already taken shape. While the common Terran calendar did not yet exist, we may still classify this period as the Tribal Era. As explained previously, this period is defined based on specific social concepts and forms of social organization. We broadly refer to some of these affiliations as tribes, although in truth, no one can precisely define the term. Yet we still need it, not only because it represents a form of organization in people's minds, but also because it indicates that something important is quietly happening. During this time, the powerful individuals in society, the protectors, gradually realized something. Instead of taking great risks to defend their own settlements, it is far more practical and rewarding to use their superior strength to force the weaker to band together and protect them. This epoch-making shift in thinking led to a shocking transformation in social structure, with the role of protector and protected quickly reversing. This ironic and unexpected shift marked the beginning of the concept of rulers and ruled in society. Unsurprisingly, a few elders with exceptional strength often occupied the ruling positions, while the ancients mostly made up the ruled. And that's underlined. It is important to note that while many nations were governed by elders, at some point during their development, others like Iberia and Litania never experienced elder rule. Interesting. I mean, that just leaves... So if not Litania, not Iberia, obviously Victoria, I guess Sargon. Yen still has elder rule. Ursus did, yes, Ursus did. Columbia's too new. Bolivar's too new, I would assume. Not Yerig. I would imagine Gaul, probably. So, I mean, most nations nowadays... Kazimierz, yeah, that's true, Kazimierz. Rimbilliton's too new. So, most of them, I guess, are gone nowadays. Agashi? Maybe. Probably. Yeah, the nine-tailed foxes, yeah, maybe. So that's like 50. That's like 50%. Half of them did. At least of the ones we know about. Obviously, there's probably countries we don't know about. Or I guess just tribes. It is important, or it is noteworthy rather, that during this period, tribes remained under constant imminent threat of annihilation by catastrophe. Mankind had not yet developed the technology to evacuate, take refuge, and even return to rebuild their homes. Living in constant fear of death, tribal leaders often resorted to extreme measures to govern their tribe's people. As the concept of tribes took hold, previously isolated groups began waging wars, with some annexing and subsuming others. This led to a host of new developments. Massive tribes began to form across the land, and with them came new notions of identity. The Oslans were one of the groups that rose from this change. One day, perhaps on a bright and sunny afternoon, a feline ruler of a tribe in what is now Sargon suddenly realized that one's rulership may well be derived from the fundamental difference between the ruler and the ruled. Another thought followed. One should emphasize this difference to the greatest degree possible, and so the term Oslan was born. There was some uncommon reason behind their extraordinary strength. This Oslan tribe had the support of the Oslan aristocrats of beasts. The Oslans who later migrated to Victoria were also descendants of this tribe. Yeah, so the lion beast lords supported them. And then we got the man, the myth, the legend, Lugal Shargis. Initially, Oslan referred to a powerful feline ruling clan. As they waged war and grew stronger with each battle, the Oslans became known across this great land, a process later referred to as the Oslan Conquest. As their population grew and their influence expanded, the term Oslan eventually came specifically to denote the dominant group within that feline tribe. Over time, those with similar physical traits were distinguished from other felines and classified as Oslans. So Oslins aren't even, yeah, I mean, we kind of know Oslins are kind of fake. Oslins aren't even elders, though. They're just felines who had the help of the aristocrats, I guess, to create their own identity. They're fake elders. We need to focus on Terran fertility patterns. It is poorly understood that the laws of reproduction are of the determining factors I think I should say one of, actually. One of the determining factors for many other aspects in life. Simply put, if the parents are of the same race, the child will be of that race. Oh, snap, we're actually getting information on this. If the parents are of a different race, the child will be one of the two. Given this context, it's quite easy to understand that why it took quite some time for Oslins to be widely recognized as a new race. So, I mean, they are separate, right? So they're cats, they're lions specifically, who were supported by the lion beast lords, which maybe gave them power. But they were able to breed themselves with other, I guess, felines to eventually pick up a distinction between Oslins and felines, or any other race. The impact of the Oslin conquest was profound. This centuries-long event completely reshaped humanity's understanding of itself. This also does show that, like, yeah, what's the difference between elders and ancients? Well, we have the general distinction of power, we have a distinction of mythicality, but even that's not true, because lions are real, but they're more elder-like. And wyverns are mythical, but they're more ancient-like. So part of it is just politics. The impact of the Oslin conquest was profound. This centuries-long event completely reshaped humanity's understanding of itself. Previously, people who lived in the same tribe and looked alike identified primarily as tribesfolk, members of the same tribe. For them, Peros and Reprobas, who lived in the same tribe and were subject to rule, wouldn't have had any significant distinction between themselves. They viewed each other simply as fellow tribesfolk. However, during the Oslin conquest, people began to meticulously categorize themselves based on physiological differences. This marked the beginning of the modern concept of race. Moreover, the Oslins fiercely challenged the traditional social model where the elders ruled over ancients, shaking the previously unquestioned order. However, the Oslin conquest did not entirely overturn this dualistic social model. It was the Carontas and the Ursus who did so over 1,000 years later. So the Oslins invented race. That sentence, though, that the Oslins fiercely challenged the traditional social model where elders ruled over ancients, that implies that the Oslins actually didn't see themselves as elders, I guess, actually. They just saw themselves as better. Just generally better people. What's the deal with Caranta and Ursus? Not Caranta and Ursus, Caranta and Ursus. Because Caranta had the Pegasus and the Knights Mora. And Ursus had the hippogriffs. The collapse of traditional social order. Then the era of nations was born. Everyone living on this great land has likely heard legends of the origin of this group. These widely circulated stories convey a shared theme of past struggles where the strong ultimately crushed the weak, whether true or not. This pattern reflects the predominant mindset during ancient society's rapid expansion. As tribes expanded, the ancient ruling model could no longer keep pace with rapidly changing social realities. Various organizations emerged to meet these new demands. Different tasks were assigned to different groups, leading to the emergence of specialized roles. In other words, the concept of professions originated during this period. Nations rose and fell. This process spanned thousands of years, slowly shaping the Terra we know today. History appears to be locked in a constant cycle, but this is not always the case. The Carontas shattered the cycle in the Terran calendar TC 11, when they ventured from their ancestral homes in the Great Grasslands and swept across the continent under the Knight Mora's Khagan's leadership. The Khagan's army waged war across the lands, toppling nations and sowing disorder along the way. Although the so-called Knights Moran conquest lasted only 4 years, it brought an upheaval to Terra unlike anything seen for a millennium. The ruling elders suffered heavy losses and could only barely retain their control. Also, we should note that the Knights Mora forces were infamous for their brutality and ruthlessness. While the Knights Mora did weaken the ancient ruler-ruled society model, their war brought suffering and despair to many innocents. Only 4 years, apparently. And 27, 12 years after the Knights Moran conquest, the tormented Ursus rose up against their arrogant hippogriff rulers. This mass rebellion quickly escalated into a full-scale war. In 31 TC, the rebel leader Igor founded the Empire of Ursus and crowned himself Tsar. This marked the beginning, or for the first time in Terra's history, that a well-organized systematic uprising by ancients successfully overthrew the rule of the elders. From that point on, people realized that the elders' dominance over the ancients was not inherently justified. The idea gradually spread and evolved into the broader recognition of racial equality. From the perspective of intellectual history, the foundation of modern social awareness began to form during this period. Calcit says, the impact of oropathy on society has been inadvertently overlooked in this discussion. As oropathy has been part of Terran life since ancient times, it almost certainly has had a major impact on human outlook. The text mentions that racial equality is one of the pillars of modern society. While that is true, the other pillar is the inequality between infected and uninfected. Empire of Ursus is old, though. Over 1,000 years. They formed in 31? Or not even 30. Well, yeah, 31 technically is when they formed. And we're in 1100? That's older than I thought. They talk about it like it was yesterday. A new era. Traditionally, we consider the year 797, when nomadic cities first appeared, as the starting point of modern urban history. Although roughly half the population still lives outside of moving cities, the advent of the technology has indeed transformed people's lifestyles and ways of thinking. Nomadic cities have largely freed their inhabitants from the threat of catastrophe. For city dwellers, the tradition of relocating to avoiding catastrophe has entirely vanished, along with many of the customs that revolved around the practice. In the 3 centuries since nomadic cities emerged, lifestyles have changed faster than ever before. Perhaps the most important question we now face is how to keep up with such rapid change. I never realized that the Silver Ash sky was a bear. Or maybe that's technically a pale roche, which would make more sense, actually. Anyway, he's the stand-in for the Ursus. All right. Race and culture. Now that we've discussed the commonalities across Terra, we shall shift our focus to the distinctive social characteristics of each region. We'll start by exploring the relationship between race and culture. Within any given human settlement, there is usually some disparity in population size between different races. In academic circles, the more populous group is often referred to as the dominant race, which often heavily influences the social landscape and cultural customs of each region. This is all the result of centuries of gradual change. Archaeological data tells us that the earliest tribes were primarily divided along racial lines. People of the same race held an unshakable sense of kinship and identity. Races were most likely the original trigger for the us versus them mentality, by encountering people who looked different from themselves. It wasn't until the late tribal era that it became common for different races to live together, a condition created by tribal warfare and conquest. While we don't fully understand the initial circumstances under the different races cohabited, it is clear that it must have been a long and conflict-ridden process. However, monoracial societies are extremely rare these days. Unless you're, well, I was going to say Laterano, but I guess they Liberia live there too, but they are an ethno-state. Unless you're the Durin. Racial differences have never been the most pressing issue in Terran society. Underline. Callithate has something to say about that. Humans may look different from one another, but catastrophe forces them to unite to survive, not to mention the growing threat of oropathy. Callithate says, the Sarkas have been regarded as the enemies of mankind multiple times throughout history. Racial persecution is a serious and long-standing issue, far too complex to be summed up in just a few words. In fact, discrimination against those infected with oropathy far exceeds any lingering animosity between the races. Modern technology has greatly facilitated human migration, but many people still prefer to live in familiar environments where they have a sense of community. This tendency toward homogeneity across Terra means that modern societies are still heavily influenced by their respective dominant races, and cultural exchange remains mere interactions instead of a true harmony. Terra's rich racial and geographic diversity, as well as her long history, have molded the different cultures we see today. The society as a whole functions as Terra's cultural melting pot. In the following sections, I shall describe some of the distinctive cultures of the Terran races. We also have a little section up here called Humanity. For modern people, the concept of humanity is almost self-evident, encompassing many races. It is easy for us today to recognize that all races, despite their vast physiological differences, are a part of humanity. However, when ancient people first encountered other races, did they perceive these unfamiliar beings as wild beasts? Currently, there is no way to know how ancient humans reacted when they made first contact. Some theory suggests that humans may have had an innate recognition of their own kind from birth, possibly due to the influence of Orangenium. And that is indeed the case, says Calcit. So, starting with Ursus, for some reason, not alphabetical in any way whatsoever. The Ursus primarily reside in the northern regions of Terra, within the borders of the Empire of Ursus, where they make up a large portion of the population. The Ursus can also be found in many other lands, including Kajimersh, Yerig, northern Sargon, interesting, and Yen, making them one of the most common races of Terra. Tall, strong, and resilient. These are the traits that people commonly associate with Ursus. They are also the characteristics that most Ursus people prefer to emphasize about themselves. This impression stems from their physiological traits. They are indeed taller and stronger than the average human. Furthermore, the unforgiving natural environment of the northern regions, with their long winters, has shaped Ursine endurance. The Ursus have numerous subgroups, primarily distinguished by differences in hair color. In addition to the common varieties of Ursus with black, brown, or white hair, there is a group in Yen with black and white hair. Leto also has black and white hair. Or is it brown? I don't know. Pandas. Yeah, that is, yeah, pandas. That didn't even click. Yeah, pandas, of course. The concept of Ursus likely predates the founding of the Empire of Ursus and may even be traced back to the earliest human naming practices of races. The majority of Ursus followed the Hippogriff Liberi on their migration to the northern regions, where they established settlements. After the tumult of the Knights Moran conquest and Igor's rebellion, the Ursus became more or less concentrated within the borders of the current Empire of Ursus. The Ursus race and Ursus people are two separate concepts. The former is a racial identity, while the latter is a national identity. When people of the Ursus race within the Empire refer to themselves as Ursus people, it has a dual meaning. First, they are objectively acknowledging their race. Secondly, they are embracing their identity as imperial citizens of the Empire of Ursus. Outside the Empire, one may also encounter individuals of non-Ursus race who identify as Ursine people. In this context, the term refers purely to their national identity. The Empire of Ursus is one of the few nations in Terra that has successfully established the idea of citizenship. Really? I wonder if we'll talk. I hope there better be a paragraph about what's the deal with anthropomorphic people. How do they work? Why are they mostly men? There better be one in here. Come on, Erikson. Don't fail me. Felines. The felines, known for their pointed ears, long tails, and keen senses, are among the most populous and widely distributed races in Terra, alongside the Perros and the Liberi. There is an old Gaulish proverb that says, "Where footprints lead, felines are found." Victoria has a significant feline population, of which I am a member. The felines' most distinctive physical features are their pointed ears and long tails, which also serve as tools for expressing emotion. There are some felines with rounded ears and short tails, but they are only a minority within the race. Looking at you, Golden Glow. Generally speaking, felines have highly developed senses and good physical coordination. Some felines have a distinctive yet subtle genetic trait. Their pupils change shape in different lighting conditions. Oh, okay. Feline people can do that. Probably not totally converted into humans by Oranginium yet. That's an interesting idea, actually. That they are like maybe it's like a leftover genetic anomaly in that they aren't like fully humanized. Interesting idea, actually. So it's like old DNA. It's like Neanderthal DNA. It is well known that due to their large population base and excellent adaptability, felines have become one of the most widespread races on Terra after a long and storied history of reproduction and migration. There are also many interesting facts of feline history which often go overlooked. For example, the majority of felines in Victoria are actually descendants of the followers of the Auckland Royal Expedition, who intermarried with locals of various races during Draco rule. So if you happen to discover a distant relative in Sargon, don't be too surprised. I think in due time the amount of races will dwindle as they become more human-like. I think they're locked in. I don't think they're changing anymore. I think we would see that already. But everyone's pretty locked in. The only thing we see different is anthropomorphs like Wei, you know, Mr. Lee. Now, maybe they could be further, if they wanted to, maybe they could, like, it could be tuned to make them further human, but it might also just be like, well, you can't make the DNA too close because it's just not possible. So it's just as close as it can be. We have no way of knowing how they'll look in 1,000 or 10,000 years. I mean, yeah, we don't, but... I would assume they've probably as a species, have hit where humans ourselves have hit, where we're like, where are we evolving anymore? Hard to say. In an era where both elders and ancients needed names to define themselves, feline became an umbrella term for almost all individuals with pointed ears, long tails, and sharp senses. Despite the obvious physical differences between them, after the Oslands gained recognition as a distinct identity separate from the feline race, many other groups attempted to replicate this success. However, we believe that all of them had failed until the modern racial taxonomy appeared, as no evidence of such new races remains. Interesting. Today, feline still refers to a large and complex race, with many people having found their place within the feline identity. It seems that only the Oslands have maintained their distinct racial status to the present day. has already stopped. Well, I think it stopped just because I think if it could go further, it would have already done that. I guess, again, it comes down to, I guess, how long it took to happen to get to where we are now in the first place. I assume it was probably a bit quick. How quick is relative. Obviously not the billions of years that it took life to evolve. But, actually, we know how quick it was. How could I forget? We know how quick it was because it's 10,000. It's like 13,000 years. Yeah, it's like 10. Because, yeah, we know Kaltza and everything is like 13,000 years old. So it took 13,000 years to reach where they are now, give or take. Which is very quick in the grand scheme of things. Extremely fast. And we've seen the Mangler in Ursus develop even faster. So it's it's possible they've speeded up. I mean, yeah, who can say though? If it's still happening, then like, I mean, yeah, it's out of our concern because it would take another 13,000 years. All right. Then we have the Oslin. Which now that I see Pero and Lupo over here, it's interesting that Pero and Lupos are different. When they are actually, dogs and wolves are closer than big cats and not big cats, for the most part. Depends on the big cat. There's exceptions, like the cheetah. But all the cats are all one group, except for the Oslins, who made their own group. Unless we're going to get something here about that, but we'll see. The distinction between the race differences is a bit arbitrary at times. For Oslins, that's in-universe political reasons, but also out of universe, I think it's just a bit arbitrary sometimes. The Oslins primarily reside in Sargon, southwestern Terra, and Victoria, south-central Terra. They make up an extremely small portion of overall Terran population. Oh, this is all for the Paros, apparently. Wow, okay. The Oslins are also a highly unique race. Biologically, they are classified undoubtedly as felines. The difference between Oslins and other felines are even smaller than those between feline ancient and elder subgroups. However, the Oslins are clearly recognized both socially and administratively as a separate race. Now, what's a feline elder group? Their distinctive status originated from the aforementioned Oslin conquest. As singular conquerors, the Oslins used force to compel other races to acknowledge their independence racially from felines. What's a mythological cat? I don't know. There must be something out there. I don't know off the top of my head though. The emergence of the Oslin concept led to a significant event in the history of racial taxonomy. Although ancient races lived separately, humans of that era did not have a clear understanding of their racial identities. So people primarily relied on appearance and other physical traits to distinguish between the races. Twin-tailed felines like moose? Well, there are Nekomata, right? I think they're just called Nekomata, which is a two-tailed cat in Japanese mythology. That's the only one I actually, know about. I do not remember Moose's lore. I'd have to refresh myself on her stuff. I know she is associated with a feline beast lord, though. For example, in ancient times, races like Lupo, Pero, and Reproba, which had similar appearances and physical traits, lived together and considered themselves members of the same race, which is ironic since Reproba are felines. The subsequent division of groups like these was directly influenced by the Oslins. The Oslins spread their unique understanding of race during their conquests, leading to the flourishing of racial taxonomy. Spot is a cat, technically. But, I mean, they're so far apart, right? Certainly not like the Oslins, which are just cats. The subsequent division of groups like these was directly influenced by the Oslins. The Oslins spread their unique understanding of race during their conquest, leading to the flourishing of racial taxonomy. Interestingly, research indicates that the new races emerging in this manner often displayed genuine physiological differences. This contrasts with the separation of Oslins from felines, where no significant physiological distinctions were observed. The Oslins themselves have no subgroups. Victorian and Sargonian Oslins belong to different Oslin families, but they are not separate racial branches. Although the differences between the Oslins and normal felines are minimum, the average strength of the Oslins are extraordinary. Their formidable prowess was one of the assets that enabled their extensive conquests in ancient times. Most of the Oslins are powerful and respectable nobles, with deep roots in aristocracies of both Sargon and Victoria. The Pero. They say Oslan. I'm going to go back to Oslan. They say Oslans are respected nobles, but we've not we've only seen the royal family were Oslans. I don't think like Castor's an Oslan. I think Castor's just a feline. So I don't know if there's actually other Oslans out there. Besides, who's ever in charge of Sargon right now is probably still an Oslan. The Peros are one of the most widely distributed and populous races on Terra. They can be found everywhere, from the Sargonian Empire to the Sami region, from Bolivar to Higashi. Currently, the Peros make up the largest population in Bolivar. Many find it difficult to distinguish Pero from Lupo, and Verprobra. I like how the hyenas keep getting grouped in with these guys. Based on, which is fair, I guess, you know, it's kind of a nod to Crownslayer, because I think a lot of people, myself included, didn't realize Crownslayer was supposed to be a hyena until she was released. And I don't remember they ever mentioned it before that point, but definitely once she was released. Until that point, I was like, yeah, I guess she's a wolf. Especially since she's associated with Syracusa a bit as well. But no. She's a hyena. So I guess I can't say it's a bit strange because people in real life, we fell for it too. Yeah, Red was like, she's a fake wolf. The classification of these groups has been a long-standing issue throughout human history. Recent research suggests that in ancient times, before the advent of writing, all of these races were indeed collectively referred to as a Pero. It was only later, during the influence of the Oslans and changes in people's understandings of races, that the other three groups consciously separated themselves from the Pero family. New concepts like Lupo, showing that the human understanding of race in that era had moved beyond simple appearances, incorporating deeper physiological insights. The Peros have a very large population base, including many elder and ancient subgroups. Today, elder subgroups like the Kirsha, Cerberus, and Uridimu mostly live alongside the Pero ancients, and it's difficult for outsiders to distinguish between them. Oh snap. We just got two new elder groups just dropped. Is one of them martial arts boy? Because I've been trying to figure out what he is for so long. So we have Kirsha and Uridimu. Does anything come up for either of these? Yes, Uridimu does. Uridimu, Mad Howling Dog, is a Mesopotamian mythical creature in the form of a human-headed dog man whose first appearance was used during the Kassite period. So, those Uridimu are probably in Sargon, based on that, since it's Mesopotamia. Kirsha, or Chirsha, perhaps, nothing comes up for. Let me type in myth, perhaps. Okay, there's a Kursha with a U instead of an I, which is a legendary dog from Georgian mythology. I bet it's probably that then. because that would be a big coincidence. Best known as a loyal companion of the cultural hero Amirani. His name means black ear, a common name for Georgian dogs. He was said to have been born of either a raven or an eagle, and sometimes is depicted as having eagle wings as a result. Apart from his wings, Kirsha or Kursha also sometimes described as having other special features like colossal paws, lips of gold, and eyes as big as sieves. That definitely does not also... I mean, it's Georgian, so that's not that martial arts guy either, I would imagine. So, but cool. Still don't know what that one guy is. I forget his name, otherwise I'd say it. Let me look up Yen. What is his name? Record keeper, right. Record keeper, who's a Pero, but he has a little horn on his head. So clearly he's some kind of elder. But yeah, so Kirsha, Cerberus, which of course is KB, and Uridimu. And you brought up a good point about Vooples earlier, because foxes are canines, so you'd think they would also be confused, but apparently... oh no, it was Volpo up here, never mind. Lupo, Volpo, and Reproba. They didn't mention over here. Over here is just Lupo and Reproba, but they did mention foxes up there. The Peros value good interpersonal relationships and always strive to treat others with kindness. Some believe this is related to their large family structures. In traditional Pero families, everyone in a single settlement is considered a member of the same family, so they do their best to maintain harmonious relationships with one another. It is worth noting that the Lupos have inherited the large family tradition, but have developed a completely opposite culture. More than one Pero has expressed a certain inexplicable familiarity and distaste for the creatures known as hounds. In military use in Bolivar, this has led to rumors that cruel human experimentation is underway in some areas of Bolivar, but to date, there is no evidence to support these claims. Calcit has something to say about that. Although there is no concrete evidence, the appearance of the hound strongly suggests that someone in Bolivar captured at least one beast aristocrat, a being forced to leave its animal body and become a transcendent spirit, and is attempting to harness its traits to create weapons of war. Generally speaking, these near immortal beings consummate with humans in their own ways. Or communicate, not consummate. That's very different. Communicate. Some beast aristocrats use disguises. To Terrans under the influence of Oranginium, they appear as oddly shaped humans. However, to those unaffected by Oranginium, they appear as animals that behave no differently from humans. Some aristocrats interact with Terrans through fragments separated from their true form, known as beast stewards. Beast stewards often gather in packs, which Terrans sometimes mistake for groups of outland creatures. Oranginium causes Terrans to subconsciously perceive beast stewards as familiar creatures with whom they feel a sense of kinship, a phenomenon that stewards exploit to their advantage. In reality, aside from rare cases like the Doctor, there are no known equals of creatures from, or examples of creatures from the previous era. Rare cases like the Doctor. Yeah, I guess that's true. They're a creature from a previous era. I imagine we'll probably see some more Hound lore in the next integrated strategies, if I had to guess. Just publicly mentioning the Doctor. That is crazy, but this is Rhodes Island's special edition. I don't think this is in every book. The Lupo. Syracuse, east of Litania, is predominantly populated by the Lupos. While there are also small Lupo populations in countries like Ursus and Victoria, the Lupos are often closely associated with the Familia culture of Syracuse. Physiologically, the Lupos are very similar to the Paros, but the Lupos were the first race to be distinguished from the Paros, and are the least likely to be mistaken for Paros. Really? 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 They're the first and least likely? This is likely due to their unique cultural traditions. The Lupos of Syracuse have a strong sense of family. In some families, all members dye their tails the same color to mark the tips of their ears with the same symbol to indicate familial affiliation. Interesting. However, unlike the Paros, this strong sense of family does not make the Lupos more inclined to treat others kindly. Instead, it fosters a heightened sense of exclusivity. In the areas where the Lupos are the dominant race, there are often very clear boundaries between families, and members of different families frequently harbor hostility toward one another. Both legend and science point to the wolf packs active in Syracuse as the cradle of Lupo culture. These fierce groups of beast stewards pose a serious threat to the local Lupo population, which had to adapt to survive. Calthet says, in contrast to most aristocrats who have faded from human view, many of those in Syracuse region, known as the Signori dei Lupi, remain quite active. They not only fight among themselves, but sometimes draw the Syracusans into the conflict. In Syracusan legend, the Fangs are puppets chosen by the aristocrats to fight on their behalf. This arrangement likely fostered a strong sense of family identity and insularity among the Syracusan Lupos. Lupos seldom emote with their ears and tails as the Paros do, but they still use body language. Lupos living in Syracuse may not wiggle their ears and tails, but they almost always employ hand gestures when speaking. Of course. It is said that high-ranking Lupos may even deliberately suppress their natural body language. A Lupo born and raised in large families may be taught to control their ears and tail to hide their emotions. Untrained Lupos may still wag their tails, but most consider large expressive movements like the Paros excessive and pointless. And then we have Vulpos, which, yeah, I forgot Durnar is a Vulpo. Special thanks to this young lady from Rhodes Island for allowing me to use her likeness in the book. Vulpo. To this day, Vulpos are frequently mistaken for Paros in many regions, due to their very similar appearance. Most of the time, Vulpos are not offended when miscategorized in another race, as it is a common occurrence. These mistaken identifications make statistical data on the distribution of Vulpos across Terra unreliable. However, generally speaking, the Vulpos make up a relatively small percentage of most populations. Vulpos are generally medium-sized, which we are. There is a height thing next to these pictures, but it's hard for even me to read, so. The green text was certainly a choice. Vulpos are generally medium-sized compared to other races. They are known for their quick reflexes and flexibility, and they excel at scouting and detecting danger in complex environments. Well-trained Vulpos are outstanding combatants. In ancient times, some Vulpos were described as the more agile branch of the Pero, making them the top choice to serve as scouts and messengers for various tribes. In Minos, the first Arrow, the epic story of a young Vulpo scout, is still told to this day. Today, Vulpos can still be found serving as mercenaries, messengers, and other similar professions. The Vulpos have both elder and ancient branches. The most famous elder branch is the nine-tailed Vulpo, most presently in far Higashi. It is said that the nine-tailed Vulpos are tied to prominent Higashinese clans, but the specifics remain unknown. Of course, there are other elder branches as well, such as the Kanya Yotl and the Fionach. That seems like maybe Kanya Yotl, based on the Plul, is like some kind of Mesoamerican. And the Fionach maybe is Celtic? I'm going to go on a limb and say that. Let's find out. I like that they're giving us actual extra elder races. Although we didn't get any Lupo one. Kanya Yotl, nothing comes up for. Literally nothing. Actually, you want to know what comes up? World of Warcraft. As for Fiona, I'm also not getting anything. I'm getting Fiona the Fox from Sonic. So, there you go. But they exist. Vulpal tails, with their exceptionally thick, fluffy fur, have become one of their most prominent features. The Vulpos of Siracusa uphold a time-honored tradition of tail grooming. At large family gatherings, presenting a well-groomed tail is considered a feat or a matter of basic etiquette. In modern times, this tradition has given rise to the Tail Care Contest, which welcomes participants from various races and regularly changes its theme. Contestants must demonstrate their interpretation of the theme on their tails within 72 hours. Clearly, participating in the Tail Care Contest presents a significant challenge to the nine-tailed Vooples. After all, it's 9 times the work. And then we have the Reproba. Which, special thanks to this Sargonian lord for allowing me to use his likeness in the book. He's got... his tail is not what I picture a hyena to have. That's a weird tail. But maybe, maybe that's a thing. I don't know. Reproba. The Reprobas are one of the least populous races in Terra. They primarily... That's, you know, Crown Slayer also has a... I never really thought about it, but now that I think about it. I don't look at hyenas too often, though, so maybe I'm wrong. They primarily reside in Sargon. However, this does not mean that they are unknown. According to some historical records, during the tribal era, the ancestors of the Reprobas maintained some traditions similar to those of the Sarkaz, which made them a controversial group within the Pero community of the time. A branch of the Reprobas that abandoned these old traditions has survived to this day. As the Oslins established a new perspective on racial boundaries, the Reprobas eventually separated from the Peros as a distinct identity. Comparatively speaking, the Reprobas' physical abilities can be described as average. Most Reprobas have furry ears and tails. Some have spots or striped patterns on their bodies. Reproba females are, in most cases, significantly stronger than males. The Reprobas' time in the Sargonian deserts have honed their survival skills and shaped their matriarchal family structure, which emphasizes unity and discipline more than the Peros. A Reproba family might have up to 100 members, and many tribes will declare a female matriarch as their nominal leader. In Sargon, the Reprobas have a long history of providing elite soldiers for the Empire, which has led to a strong martial culture. It is said that Reproba women, ancients, bravely fought against the Knights Morin invaders, becoming a key resistant force to the Kagan. The Reprobas were one of the last groups to separate from the Peros, but they have long held many unusual and ancient traditions, which this has made their ancestors the subject of many horror stories passed down in Sargon. Many Reprobas are uncomfortable with their attention and are particularly sensitive to or about their similarity to the Sarkaz, preferring that others avoid the topic altogether. Are we talking about cannibalism? Like, what are we talking about here? Of course, there are some who do not mind how others perceive them. Today, the lives of the Reprobas are changing. They are gradually moving away from their ancestral homes in Sargon and are utilizing their experience in the Barren Lands to develop professional careers in a variety of fields. Breeding unique livestock and conducting field research are among their specialties. People in other parts of Terra who have not heard of the Reprobas often misidentify them as a slightly unusual Pero. Liberi. Truly the most populous race. Liberi is a general term for both elders and ancients who have feathers on their bodies. This broad taxonomy has made the Liberi one of the largest and most widely distributed races of Terra. The Liberi are one of the primary races of Colombia. There are also significant Liberi populations in Iberia and Laterano. I mean, I think they're the only population in Iberia, really, besides Aegir. The most distinctive feature of the Liberi is the feathers that grow on their bodies. Typically, the feathers replace the hair on parts of their heads and torsos. Liberi are generally of average height, with females being slightly shorter. They also tend to be lighter in weight. Physically, the Liberi are rather ordinary with no particular notable traits. The broad term Liberi includes both elders and ancients. There are many racial subgroups they often observe small differences among themselves. The most wide-known Liberi elders are the Hippogriffs, who have the feathers of the Liberi and the tail of the Carontas. They were the elders who founded the Hippogriff Kingdom. Since its founding, Colombia has actively absorbed immigrants from various regions. Large numbers of Liberi migrated to Colombia from across Terra. Surveys of Liberi immigrants indicate that their main reason for moving to Colombia included the opportunity to start a new life and magnetic appeal of the enigmatic Liberi president. Say it with me, Mark Max. President Max, who frequently appears on television, is highly popular in the Liberi community. Due to their vast numbers and wide distribution, it is difficult to summarize any common cultural traditions among the Liberi. Some Liberi scholars have even called for further subdivisions of the race, while others argue that we should not confer cultural norms within racial classification. That means they do acknowledge Mark Max has an image. Because it's in the game, it seems like the vice president, Jackson, of course, is like the public image. And yeah, Mark Max is often with him, but it kind of always feels like people don't realize that's Mark Max. Unless they just know he's a Liberi. They're like, oh, he's a Liberi, but no one actually knows who he is. Maybe. We only got one Liberi elder group, Hippogriffs. No mention. I was hoping they'd mention maybe Griffin or Arkedo or the Kulkakons. Just the Hippogriffs. Or even just something new. There's a lot of mythological birds, that's for sure. The Coutist. The Coutist population of Terra is primarily concentrated in the autonomous counties, of Rimbiliton and its surrounding areas, with smaller populations in other countries and regions. The doors of new homes are often left open to everyone, whether or not the visitors appreciate canned carrots. The Coutist's most distinct physical feature are their long ears and short, fluffy tails. The highly developed auditory organs and quick reflexes compensate for their relatively small size. We have reason to believe that these inherent advantages help the Coutist survive through the tribal era and eventually flourish into a large population. To make up for the individual physical shortcomings, the countesses of modern Rim Billiton have generally adopted a communal lifestyle. During the tribal era, they formed vibrant bunker settlements. They work together, cultivate root crops, mine veins, and carve out half-underground bunker homes, commonly known as rabbit holes. Large extended families form the core of each countess community. Countess families value unity and cohesiveness, but members are also encouraged to venture out and form new families elsewhere, as it helps keep the bunker community's populations at manageable levels. Since the dawn of the Crystal Age, the countesses have stepped out of their bunkers and established mining unions throughout Rim Billiton. These unions are not just economic organizations, they have largely inherited the social structure, productive functions, and culture of the bunker communities. It is precisely because of these unions that the innocent and gentle countesses stood their ground during the Cage incident, resisting the pressure and influence of a powerful empire. My thanks to the young lady from Rose Island for allowing me to use her likeness in the book. Shout out to Castor. Not that Castor. The Cage incident. They've mentioned that it was I think it was when Victoria tried to take over the country, as they do. Then we have the Karanta. Generations after their ancestors first settled on the Kajimersian plain in north-central Terra, this strong and swift race continues to live and thrive there. Over 1,000 years ago, many Karantas left the grasslands with the Knights Mora Kagan, which is why they can now be found all across Terra. The Karantas are more physically robust than the average Terran, although not as powerful as the Ursus or Forte. They have superior endurance. In ancient times, the Karantas' outstanding physical fitness allowed them a nomadic lifestyle on the plains. As nomads, the Karantas needed to quickly respond to sudden attacks. This led to the formation of a martial culture where everyone was trained in combat, an early precursor to knightly culture. In traditional Karanta culture, the concept of family was significant. The Karantas changed homes from season to season and year to year, but their family members remained consistent and close-knit. As such, familial hierarchy was crucial, and each family of knights was led by a knight primus. Even in modern Kajimerj, where knights are now a form of entertainment and most residents have moved to nomadic cities, the Knights Association still upholds the knight primus system, which was a big issue for the Neural family. The Karantas have a modest number of subgroups, including both elders and ancients. The most famous Karanta elders are the Pegasi and the Knights Mora. The rivalry between these two forces is still a popular topic of discussion today. After the Pegasi were defeated, their leaders were forced from the throne. The Pegasi, once rulers, were demoted to knightly nobility. The Knights Mora, following their failed Kagan's crusade, became wanderers. It is said that their descendants can still be found scattered across this great land. Karanta armies, scientifically trained and equipped with the latest technology, display astonishing mobility in battle. According to public report by the Adeptus Bradavili Kazimierz, in a battle during the Kazimierz-Ursus War, a knight order known as the Silverlance Pegasus dominated the battlefield, reportedly even chasing down several old-model Ursine warships in the wilderness and stopping them through close-quarter boarding maneuvers. That's badass. While deity Grifferberg has not provided detailed accounts of these wartime exploits, never have they denied the veracity of the description. Forta. My favorite. The Fortas, which I guess is actually just pronounced Fort, but that's kind of crazy, so I'm going to keep saying Forta. The Fortas are the dominant race of Minos, and located in southwestern Terra. They are also widely distributed across countries with vast plains such as Yen and Sargon, making them one of the most common races in Terra. The once popular Forta energy drink vividly demonstrates the stereotypes people hold about this race. Most people recognize the Fortas for their strength, yet in many regions where they are the dominant race, intelligence is more highly valued trait. Since ancient times, many Forta settlements have been scattered across the land of Minos. Red Bull. Oh, yeah, that's exactly what it is. It is said that the Fortas immerse themselves in artistic creation and intellectual discourse, a lifestyle that contrasts starkly with the highly martial Reproba tribes nearby. It is generally believed that several highly respected ancient philosophers were Fortas. The most famous among them is Phaenarites of Minos, who frequently engaged in philosophical discussions with an unknown feline woman from Sargon. Together, they laid the foundation of many subsequent philosophies, although neither of them left behind a complete theoretical system or any written work. Many of the questions they raised have been debated over the subsequent millennia. Outside of Minos, Fortas are often perceived as honest and hard-working, likely because they typically take on labor-intensive roles. The Forta population in Yen is possibly one of the earliest Terran groups to engage in agricultural production. Compared with traditional hunting and gathering lifestyles, farming is more labor-intensive. With the strong but less agile Fortas were clearly better suited for this new way of life. Unknown feline from Sargon. I wonder if she was green. Yeah. Yeah, that did cross my mind. However, maintaining an agricultural lifestyle in a fixed location was highly risky because of the constant threat of catastrophe. It is said that the Yenese Fortas invented transport vehicles capable of traveling on rugged terrain, which allowed them to quickly move between different plots of farmland, giving each piece of land time to accumulate fertility while also diluting the risks in the face of catastrophe. Cars? Did the Fortas invent cars? Or did they just mean like a wagon? I don't know. No Forta elders. But bovines are I feel like pretty common in mythology too. So it wouldn't have been too difficult. Caprinae. The Caprinae are one of the most common races of Terra. They primarily reside in Litania and its surrounding areas, with a significant population scattered across the land. The Caprinae are renowned for their exceptional mastery of Oranginium arts. Many people believe that every Caprinae can perform certain mysterious, esoteric arts, but this is just a stereotype shaped by exaggerated realities and unrealistic hopes. On average, Caprinae do indeed exhibit better Oranginium arts assimilation than other races. However, there still remain Caprinae who cannot use arts at all. The Caprinae are quite proud of their horns and have unique aesthetic standards for them. Their love of horns extends even to other races. They show a particular interest in the horns of Fortas, Voivras, Ceratos, which I believe are the rhinos, of which we only ever have one example, Bubble, and Sarkaz, as well as the antlers of Alafia. The differences between these protrusions are a popular topic of discussion among Caprinae. Litania is where the Caprinae population is most concentrated. It is widely believed that the Litanians' love for art and culture is closely tied to the Caprinae, who are the dominant race in the region. The Caprinae are not particularly strong physically compared to other races, and this may have contributed to their finely tuned, sensitive nature. There is a theory that this sensitivity is both a cause and an effect of their exceptional aptitude for arts. Alafia, which immediately has some note here. It is worth noting that the way Terrans differentiate races is vastly different from the species taxonomies of previous civilizations. A unique branch of the Alafia found in northern Sargon and southern Colombia serves as a good example of this difference. This group exhibits several traits that are very different from most Alafia. They are notably taller and have shorter, unbranded horns and longer, tufted tails. Terrans classify them as Alafia simply because their horns are likewise covered with skin tissue. I like how Cassett's just pulled back the current completely, and it's like, yeah, there was a previous civilization. Alafia found in Sargon and southern Colombia. Shorter, unbranded horns, longer, tufted tails. What would that be? Maybe they'll talk about it. I'm not sure what that's referring to. Tufted tails. Presumably isn't actually a deer of some sort because of the first comment that's different from species taxonomy. Sami in the far north of Terra. Oh. Giraffes. Mechanist. Southern Colombia and northern Sargon? That would make sense. Yeah, courier is like a deer not subspecies, but like a deer species that's not a deer but close or something. But yeah, I'm pretty sure Mechanist is considered an Alafia, but he's a giraffe. Sami is in the far north of Terra and is predominantly populated by Alafia. There are also large Alafia populations in forested communities like Ursus, Kazimierz, and Litania, making them one of the most common races of Terra. I feel like every single one so far has been that. Several hundreds of years ago, a wave of literary and artistic creation swept through Gaul and other countries, where the physiological traits of various races were given romantic interpretations through popular fables. Alafia, who mostly live in forests and have antlers that resemble branches, were often depicted as mystical children of the forest. This interpretation has led subsequent generations to believe that the Alafia are closely connected to nature, though this has no academic basis. It is true that most Alafia now residing in forest communities like Ursus and Litania and Kazimierz originally hail from Sami, where a deep reverence for nature is a unique cultural tradition. However, with the progress of urbanization, most Alafia have lost their connections to nature. Yet, there are still a few remote Alafia-dominated communities where people continue to lead nomadic hunting lifestyles within the forests. For the Capernae and Fortas, horns are a primarily aesthetic consideration, but for many Alafia, the significance of their antlers is much deeper and more nuanced. Unlike the horns of Capernae or Forta, Alafia antlers are not covered in keratin. At a certain stage of growth, they are covered by skin tissue and innervated, meaning that many Alafia antlers are sensitive during certain stages of their growth. As such, touching antlers is for many Alafia a deeply spiritual and emotional interaction, one that can be either friendly or represent profound disagreement. It is said that the classic poem Withered Leaves and New Branches was written by two quarreling Alafia poets. At the height of their debate, they touched antlers. The resulting work is a balanced fusion of opposition and harmony. In some Alafia tribes of Sami, antlers are believed to serve as a conduit for preserving nature. Some Alafia antlers continue to grow slowly throughout their lives and retain their sensitivity. An Alafia from Sami described the elder priestess of his tribe to me as follows: "Between her antlers flow the sensations of 1,000 living beings." The real question is, do they shed their antler skins? And the next real question is, do they eat that? Because deer do that. I am curious if they shed it, though. Or if they've evolved past shedding. Voivra, manticores are next. Phidia, the most common, least common race. See, how much more do we have? I think we're going through every single race, which is awesome. We'll go some more. I don't think we'll finish it. But we'll maybe do these three more. I am curious about manticores especially. Voivra. My thanks to this young lady from Rhode Island for allowing me to use her likeness in the book. The Voivra primarily reside in Sargon, Victoria, and the disputed territories controlled by the Voivra Alliance. What? There's a Voivra Alliance? In recent years, many Voivras have chosen to settle in other countries and regions after retiring from mercenary life. The relationship between the Voivras and the Draco is intriguing, as they share many similarities in appearance. However, the Dracos are generally far more skilled in Orangenium arts than the Voivra. The Voivras were defeated during the Auslan conquest. However, the Auslans recognized the Voivra's formidable strength and rewarded the various Voivra tribes with large tracts of land and allowed them to serve as Auslan guards. Later, when a branch of the Auslan royal family embarked on an expedition to Victoria, they brought some Voivras with them, where the ancestors of the Voivras now living in Victoria. The territories granted in the Voivras by the ancient Auslans were located on the northern border of Sargon, where the Voivra tribal leader enjoyed a high degree of autonomy. After the dawn of modern era, the Voivra tribes even managed to unite and build small nomadic cities. In recent decades, the Voivra alliance formed of these tribes has been seeking an opportunity to fully succeed from the Sargonian Empire. What? But they have not yet succeeded. That's awesome. I wish them luck. Most traditional Voivra families provide their children with rigorous combat training and specialized training as guards. The best students are sent to the Sargonian court to serve as personal guards to the Auslan imperial household. Those who do not make it often become mercenaries. This is how the Voivra mercenary tradition began. I mean, how hard is it to actually succeed from Sargon? It's a very decentralized place. Is the king, is the emperor, whatever his name, the Shah, is he gonna actually send anyone to stop you? Probably. Man, maybe. But we could see a Voivra country, maybe. That'd be cool. Manticore. Manticores are a Terran race. Also, no mention on Voivra about elders or ancients, really. Like, why are they considered ancients? Nothing. Maybe Manticore will mention it, maybe not. We'll see. Manticores are a Terran race marked by wings and a segmented chitinous tail. Almost all manticores reside within Sargon and are very rare. Manticores have two distinct physical features: a pair of membranous wings on either side of their heads, and an elongated segmented tail covered with chitinous shell, usually ending in a stinger. The average height of a manticore is roughly the same as a Terran average, with females being slightly shorter than males. They are physically strong and some have venom on their stingers. Manticores are known for being highly reclusive, holding cultural tradition that values discretion and secrecy. As a result, they maintain a distance from other races. When nomadic cities emerged, the Manticores chose to continue their traditional ways of life, rather than move into the cities. Today, most Manticores live in remote areas of Sargon, far from the nomadic cities. I once visited a Manticore permanent settlement with a research team. The village headman was hesitant to receive us, but after we explained our interest in Manticore culture, the locals reluctantly opened their gates. According to the village headman, the term Manticore has been part of the local legends for generations. It may predate the beginning of history of humans of this great land, he added. To outsiders, Manticores are largely a mystery, and there are many stories about man-eating Manticores and Manticore curses. These tales stem from a fear of the unknown and are nothing but rumors and slander. In reality, Manticores live normal lives just like the residents of the so-called civilized nomadic cities. I guess they aren't elders because of politics as well, where they just are too few and too reclusive to have been in the position to be an elder, perhaps. They're also the only ones that aren't, like, related to anything else. Most elders, I guess, are kind of related to another ancient, except for, unless you consider the Voivod to, I guess, be related to the Dracos. But the Manticores are just kind of their own thing, so. Maybe if there was, like, an insect race. But no. Phidia. The Phidia are one of the less common races of Terra. If you can believe it. But their presence is spread across the land. On the plains of Sami, in the forests of Ursus, the arid soils of Sargon, or the skyscrapers of Victoria, one may find traces of the Phidia, if one searches carefully enough. The Phidia are characterized by a single pair of pointed ears and long, scaly tails. They are generally taller than the average Terran, but their body mass is often below average. This has led to the stereotype of them being frail and weak, a stereotype that is, of course, unfounded. Overall, their physical abilities fall well within the average range. Due to their small population and dispersed living patterns, most knowledge of the Phidia comes from literary depiction. In literature, the Phidia are often depicted as sensitive and high-strung. Leading some to believe they are easily startled and emotionally unstable. I know of at least one example where that's true. They are commonly called snakes and are one of the races often identified by their epithet rather than by their actual name. Many languages have expressions like a snake in the grass, which imbue the nickname with somewhat negative connotations. However, like the stereotype of being frail and weak, this portrayal of the Phidia is without factual basis. The vast majority of Phidia are non-venomous, they do not hiss, and walk on two legs. I do not personally know many Phidia, but I have gotten on well with the few I have met. Based on my observations, if there is one true defining characteristic of the Phidia, it is their ability to focus intensely on a single task for long periods, that is, maintaining a clear singular goal. Many people of other races also have this quality, but when it comes to the Phidia, it can be found in every Phidia I know. There is one gentleman who has spent years researching methods to use colored oranginium lamps for real-time long-distance communication. He went to Yerrig to work on railway construction and design an entire signaling system for them. Another lady is passionate about nightly tournaments, not the sport itself, but the results. She's the author of a sprawling 600-page tome, reportedly written over 4 years and is still being refined, titled The Yearbook of Night Competition 1094 edition. I believe some readers may have heard of it. I could not finish it. And it seems that the Yearbook of Night Competition 1095 edition is also in the works. My thanks to this young lady from Rhodes Island for allowing me to use her likeness in the book. Someone helped I like the little Yerrick thing. Someone helped build the railroad and designed the signaling system. Neat. I do like how he's like, all these stereotypes are fake, but maybe this stereotype is true. After all, everyone I've met is like that. Okay, Erikson, if you say so. No mention of snake elders, of which snakes are also there's definitely some options out there. A lot of mythological snakes. Also no mention of possible horns. Still wondering about that. Little sneak peek of next time. Savra, Zalik, the Durin. That's kind of random to put there, but okay. Durin before Arcosaurio? What are the rules? What is the order? I don't know. But we'll stop there. Let me actually get the bookmark. It's hiding. There it is. Terra, a journey. I will try. We'll see. So I'm going away next week for counting that week, 2 weeks, I guess. But I might try and get a stream of this off on like Monday. So keep an eye out for that. Otherwise, tomorrow is the usual for Bullet Friday. And that's all for now. So thank you all for watching. And until we meet again, may the sands of time treat you well.